So recently the Dragon Ball Super Moro arc came to a close in the manga, and when I say recently, I mean pretty much today. Speaking of today, we had our first real look at Granolah, the centerpiece for the new Dragon Ball Super arc. So if you don't really want spoilers for the chapter of the manga that released today, then here's your early warning. However, seeing as you stopped by, thank you for stopping by, and also feel free to go and check out the other videos if you're planning on clicking off this one. And if you'd like to head over to www.wellkingkanji.com, you can check out any merchandise, prints, keyrings, and anything else I might have for sale on there. Link is in the description section below. Hope you enjoy the video. But to continue, what's interesting about Granolah is that he's not being billed as much of a fighter. As per his design, which we'll speak more about in a minute, he's designed as a very skinny and not very threatening looking person in terms of stature, which of course is very different from a lot of the recent Dragon Ball villains that have been introduced. However, this was the same situation with the Saiyans of Universe 6 and of the introduction of Zamasu. I mean, Kaba, for instance, looks like he was going to snap if the wind changed direction. I would have said the same thing about Kale as well, but we all know what happens with her. Getting into the plot of today's chapter, it was revealed that 7-3, the guy that kind of looked like Hit but wasn't, one of the main antagonists of the Moro arc, is not only alive, but he was actually stolen by some of the criminals that were locked away in the Galactic Prison and freed by Moro, and now locked back up in the Galactic Prison. We come to find this out because they're basically just there taunting Jocko the entire time. It's quite amusing, to be honest. But the reason this is important is because 7-3 is heavily involved in the introduction of Oatmeal and Granolah. It's not exactly to say in what capacity that he's going to be involved in the story as of yet, but it's clear that 7-3's role in this arc is going to be just as significant as it was in the previous one, if not more. In our previous knowledge of the Sufurians, or the Tuffles, or the Sufurigens, depending on what your preferred pronunciation is, in the past they've been billed more as scientists rather than warriors, which is how the Saiyans overthrew them so easily. Now, again, what's important to address here is that Toriyama never actually had them as part of his original manga. It was a concept introduced in the filler of Dragon Ball Z in the Saiyan arc. It was used to explain where the Saiyans got their armor, their scouters, and their other technology, like their space pods. But this quickly begins to fall apart, obviously, if you've read the rest of the manga or watched the show, because after the introduction of Frieza, you learn that all of Frieza's army used this technology. You could headcanon it as perhaps they mass-reproduced the tech after enslaving the Saiyans, but it doesn't really make much sense in the grand scheme of things, especially when you fast-forward to today. Speaking of fast-forwarding, fast-forward to December 2018, when the Broly movie released in Japan, we actually saw a familiar face of Kikono released in the Shintani character designs. We'd seen him briefly appear in Dragon Ball Minus, only this time we get some more information with him. And it explains that he actually designed and developed the classic and recognizable original Scouter that we're all familiar with from the beginning of Dragon Ball Z. But of course, as I've just mentioned, if he designed that, it retcons the filler introduction of the Tuffles and the Saiyans taking that tech from them. But with all this being said, it's also in the Broly movie that we see the Saiyans using what they call the Scouterscopes, which are apparently like the previous model of the Scouters. The origin of which we still don't know, however it wouldn't be hard to say that the Sufurians or the Tuffles developed them, and then the Saiyans and the Frieza Force took the Scoutscopes from them on the other planet that they obviously conquered them from. This is assuming that, of course, they haven't come from the same planet of the Saiyans, because in the episode of Bardock, whilst it's not necessarily canon, we do see that when Bardock travels back in time, we see him on Planet Plant, which would later become Planet Vegeta. But of course, those little plant things are not the Tuffles. And if they are, we're going to get a very weird looking bad guy in this arc. What's also worth mentioning here is, aside from rebooting Broly, the whole reason we know Toriyama and Toyotaro have interest in doing something with the Tuffles is, aside from knowing Toei liked the idea enough that they got Nakatsuru to design Baby in GT, Toriyama and Toyotaro actually made a Sufurian in the Tournament of Power from Universe 2. He kind of looks like a mix between Dr. Mew and Dr. Jarrow, like if they had a baby, but it's not impossible to think that they may not do more with the Tuffle race in the future, and perhaps the future is right now. I have to mention this because if we look at the design of Granolah, it's interesting that he has a device over one eye. It kind of looks like a belt with a steampunk scouter. It's hard to sort of describe this thing. I really don't know how they pitched it to each other when they were sort of talking about it, but it looks like a retro scouter. It even has the cup over the right ear that's so synonymous with the original scouter. Granolah uses this to scan the army of 7-3s when he's searching for the one that they want, which is very similar to how they use the scout scope in Dragon Ball Super Broly when Paragus and Beat are on the planet and they're looking around. It's also interesting that Granolah uses an electric pulse rifle. This is interesting because obviously when we actually were introduced to the Tuffles before, we've always seen them with guns, except for, Baby, but again, Baby's kind of like a reproduction or like a sort of cyborg version of a Tuffle. It's very difficult to explain what his origin is supposed to be. But it's all pretty cool. And to mention the fact that 7-3 was stolen, we don't know where from yet, but perhaps the Tuffles had something to do with 7-3's origin. Not to mention that Oatmeal and Granolah are so interested in OG 7-3i, further cementing their interest in science and tech and whatever else they want to do with him. Also, it's not really worth mentioning, to be perfectly honest, but I'm going to say it anyway just for the heads up, is the fact that 7-3's eyes aren't dissimilar from what babies are like in Dragon Ball GT at the beginning, but that could just be a coincidence of design. Toyotaro is known for playing up to fanfiction-like storylines because, of course, he used to be a fanfiction writer. Whether it's Goku Black or Zycor or Zamasu or Evil West Kai, it would really not surprise me to find that he had an interest in the Tuffle storyline. So given everything that we know so far, I do believe that Granolah is probably going to end up being a Sufurian, which will create a very cool storyline, and I'll be interested to see where they go with that direction going forth. Maybe they'll want to seek out all the Saiyans and kill them, I don't know, but if that's the case, then I wouldn't be surprised if we see Broly appear in this arc as well. I'm excited to see it develop anyway. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section down below. Remember to leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more from Welky and Kanji, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye!